So hi everyone, and thanks a lot to Jérôme and Mylene for organizing this symposium, which will mainly deal with environmental DNA, as far as I understood. I'm sorry for not being here. Maybe next time. So the general context of this symposium and of this talk as well is all the challenges we all face when monitoring tropical forest biodiversity. There are numerous, and this emphasizes the need to develop new monitoring methods that would be able to increase the sampling comprehensiveness and frequency of these very vulnerable ecosystems, but also to circumvent the linear neutral form that is particularly high for tropical biodiversity. So for this, environmental DNA is a very promising technique because first it's DNA, so it's 1,000 objective criteria to identify species that can now be relatively easy to obtain thanks to high throughput sequencing methods. And also because DNA is everywhere in the environment, it's present in an intracellular and an extracellular form. And these two pools of DNA are also subjected to a lot of transport, both horizontal but also across different compartments of the ecosystem, which makes that when you sample an environmental sample, whatever it is, and that you extract the DNA, most of this DNA will correspond to microbial populations that live within the sample, and an important part of this DNA will also correspond to either microbial species, but also macroorganisms that are not present in the sample. So currently, the technique that is most widely used to analyze eDNA is what we call DNA metabarcoding, which is a technique that consists in enriching by PCR your DNA extract with what we call a barcode. So a barcode is a genomic region that is strongly variable between different species, but that is flanked by two regions that are strongly conserved across all the species of interest, so that when you will initiate this enrichment procedure, you will target really the specific gene of interest for the specific clade you are interested in. So once you obtain the PCR products, it can be sent to the sequencer. You will obtain a lot of sequences that can be then classified either using a reference database or using de novo techniques to create groups of sequences that are similar to each other and that we call more generally molecular operational taxonomic units. So these are kind of similar to a species list that you can use for making ecological inference. And the question that emerged that we had when this technology emerged a decade ago, basically, was really what kind of signal we can really retrieve from this kind of approach in tropical forest. So to answer that question, we did a series of studies in French Guiana where we focused mostly on the soil matrix because we thought that it's something that is very easy to collect. So afterwards, you can implement easily large-scale initiatives. And also we thought that soil is a very integrative matrix that could not only accumulate information of what lives above, but also provide you information of what lives below ground. So first question we asked was whether the soil plant DNA could mirror the above ground plant communities, and in particular the distribution in trees and individuals. So for this, we sampled a 1 hectare plot with a systematic sampling of topsoil every 5 meters. And in this plot, we had also in parallel a very good botanical inventory. On the soil sample, we applied DNA metabarcoding using a plant-specific marker, and this allowed us to draw some maps of the amount of DNA corresponding to different species. And we compared this distribution with the trees individuals observed at the field, as you can see with the black dots. And so you can see that we have mixed results. So in some cases, we have very good fit between the molecular and botanical distribution. But in other cases, we have a total lack of fit. And we explain this bad results to the fact that some species, some tree species could have a deep rooting system that will make escape our sampling strategy as we focus on the top soil layer. We also had some false positive in certain cases, and we explain this to be the result of the presence of saplings that are not recorded in the botanical survey. We do not exclude the fact that there are other artifacts that could explain this lack of fit, but yeah, what we really think is that what we obtain, the signal we obtain is strongly related to the route, some information about the route, and not about what leaves about, including the litter. And I say this because we also conducted an analysis where we compare the bacterial and the eukaryotic communities in both the soil and the litter compartment in two different types of forest habitats. And the most discriminant factor for these communities was not the habitat, but really the type of environmental matrix we sampled, which means that even if they are very close physically, they still harbor very distinct communities, and there is a little transfer between these two compartments. Another question we asked was whether the soil signal, the soil DNA signal is consistent through time. So for this, we did a sampling during 2 consecutive wet and dry seasons. And we studied the community composition in plants, bacteria, and eukaryotes. And so you can see that we did not observe any change in plant communities, but we observed a lot of change for bacteria and eukaryotes. And these changes were already visible at a broad taxonomic resolution. We observed, for example, a decrease in Delta Proteobacteria and also in Annelise abundance in the soils of the dry season. That makes perfect sense because we know these big clades to be very sensitive to soil drought, basically. So this analysis suggests that the dynamics we observe with soil DNA reflects on biological dynamics in the soil. Another analysis we conducted was a fine-scale spatial about the fine-scale spatial distribution of soil biodiversity for a 12-hectare plot where we sampled every 10 meters. And so we obtained this kind of diversity maps for a variety of groups of prokaryotes, microkaryotes, and for the mesofauna. And so you can see that we have a very different spatial patternings, both in terms of diversity depicted here, but also in terms of community composition. We tried to explain these patterns with some contextual parameters, but found only slight effect of soil metal contents, soil moisture, and local plant species identity. And in general, when we're using new community models, the result we obtained is that the spatial patterns we observed did not deviate that much from what we could expect by chance, which suggests that what drives this kind of distribution rather correspond to neutral dynamics. Now we are starting to use this kind of approach to answer more applied questions. In this case, to assess the conservation potential of urban forest fragments in the urban city, in the Cayenne city. Sorry. And for this, we compare the urban forest fragments against pristine forests that are nearby the Cayenne city. And so you can see that we observe in general a decrease in diversity for a variety of groups in the soil in the urban forest, except for bacteria, but this is due to the fact that soil urban forests are richer in nutrients and more enriched by bacteria that are strongly linked to anthropogenic activities. So in general, a loss of taxonomic diversity, but when we consider the community composition in terms of functional groups, we did not find that much difference between the two types of forests, which means that somehow urban forest fragments could still be useful to conserve some basic and broad functions of the soil in the urban landscape. Okay, so you can see that we can obtain a meaningful information when you collect soil eDNA, but this information strongly remain restricted to the soil system. And so that means that we need to diversify the type of matrix we sample if we are to obtain more holistic view of tropical forest biodiversity. You will see some example of other type of analysis later during the symposium. Something that has been recently proposed also is the sampling of the air, the DNA that we present in the air. It's some studies that has been published last year that made some proof of concept, but I had some colleagues that have been conducted this kind of analysis in a tropical forest and using this kind of device. And they did not find much information. In particular, they were not able to retrieve any vertebrate sequences and very poor amount of sequences related to plants. So for now, this option is not very suitable or to sample forest biodiversity. Another alternative could be to sample the DNA that is present in the rainwash from the canopy. This is something that we'll start to study very soon in another project. Something that I did not mention at all during my talk is the fact that DNA metabarconing, even though it is a very powerful technique, it has a lot of dark side. And in particular, you can introduce a lot of different noise at each step of the data production process. So that means that when you implement, I won't detail the whole thing here, but what you really need to remind is to, when you want to implement a DNA metabarcoding analysis, you will need to take care of your experimental setup so that you include, you minimize all these bias, and you include a variety of controls to really quantify the amount of this noise through the data production process. Beyond DNA metabarcoding, there is still a lot of development to do for all the techniques that are related to environmental DNA, both in terms of molecular techniques, but also in terms of database completion, to obtain meaningful information about biological communities and to generate, in particular, essential biodiversity variables. So the field is still in a strong need for methodological development in that respect. And last but not least, besides this development, we really need to, eDNA techniques remain quite expensive for tropical countries. So we really need to make some development to make these techniques more inclusive. So this can be done by developing field compatible facilities, so no need for labs. This can be done by increasing the exchanges and the funding opportunities for local actors. And finally, this can be done by low-techify, so the process of the data production when using this kind of methodology. And we can discuss this later on if necessary. With this, I thank you all for your attention, and all my collaborators and colleagues that have largely contributed to this work.